Good day, everyone. Mabuhay. So, I am Christian Chavez Ikaw, and together with my partner, Willin Cristel P. Gaida, we are going to discuss the topic about eco-criticism. So, here's our main objectives. So, at the end of this lesson, we're going to familiarize fundamental eco-critical concepts and how ecological perspectives in literature have evolved over time and vary across different cultures. Next is we are going to analyze literary text from an ecological perspective, identifying themes related to the environment, nature, and humanity's relationship with the natural world. And next is to reflect on how the study of eco-criticism has influenced their personal environmental awareness and perspectives on literature. So first, we are going to define what is eco-criticism. So, simply, eco-criticism is an interdisciplinary field of study that analyzes how the natural world is portrayed in literature, so typically in relation to modern environmental concerns. So, eco-criticism is the latest critical discipline which is distinctive amongst modern literary theory and cultural theories. It is established as the literary theory. So, ang eco-criticism, it is a special discourse. It studies the connection between nature and literature. So, it explores the relationship between the environment and literature. So, the human being is an element of nature. So, literature and art influence human life. So, human life too influences the art and literature. So, eco-criticism redefines our relationship with the environment and literature. So it identifies roots of the problem of ecological crisis in the relationship of the society with nature and also the structure of the societies inside. It's also connected with the social and economic justice. So the loss of ecology has irreversible intergenerational consequences. So the protection of air, water, soil health, and diverseness ought to be primary environmental imperatives. So the environment impacts on people's lives nowadays. So quality of natural environment determines the standard of human life. So cultural survival of individuals depends upon integrated environmental practices. So imagination and creative thinking are powerful forces that establish the understanding of nature. So there's the necessity to extend the environmental awareness among the human being of all countries. In etymology, eco-criticism emerged as a study of the relationship between literature and the natural environment in the mid 1990s. So, eco-criticism is a term derived from Greek roots oikos, Latinized as eco, which can often find as economic as well as in ecology. So by definition, according to Cheryl Gladfelty defines it in her introduction to the eco-criticism reader in 1996. So what is eco-criticism? So she defined eco-criticism as the study of the relationship between literature and the physical environment. So just as feminist criticism examines language and literature from a gender-conscious perspective, and the Marxist criticism brings an awareness of modes of production and economic class to its reading of text. So eco-criticism takes an earth-centered approach to literary studies, according to Gladfelty on 1996. So, in this definition, Cheryl Gladfelty focused on the relationship between culture and nature and the interrelationships, especially the arts and culture of language and literature. So, the eco-critical literature examines the relationship of the environment to other forces. So, it examines how the land is represented in metaphors, values, and culture. So, according to Cheryl, so eco-critics encourage others to think seriously about the relationship of humans to nature, about the ethical and aesthetic dilemmas posed by the environmental crisis, and about how language and literature transmit values with profound environmental implications. So, There are basically two waves of eco-criticism as identified by Lawrence Buell. So the first wave, eco-critics focused on nature writing, so nature poetry and wilderness fiction. So they used to uphold the philosophy of organism. So here, environment effectively means natural environment. So the aim of the wave was to preserve biotic community. So the eco-critics of this wave appraised the effects of culture upon nature, with a view toward celebrating nature, breaking its despoilers, and reversing their harm through political action. So, eco-criticism initially aimed at earth care. So ang second wave na po sa eco-critics inclined towards environmental justice issues and the social eco-criticism, which considers urban landscape as seriously natural landscape, according to Buell. So this wave of eco-criticism is also as revisionist eco-criticism. So it seeks to locate the vestiges of nature in cities and exposes crimes of eco-injustice against society's marginal section. So the eco-critics interpret nature writing texts. So at the same time, they use them as a context for analyzing principles and customs of our society in relationship to nature. So often, the result is a critique of how our culture devalues and degrades the natural world. So now, eco-criticism is said to be in the third wave as stated by Glatfelty, so Scott Slovic, and others initiating feminist perspectives in the study of eco-literature. So Buell in the essay Eco-Criticism, Some Emerging Trends, published in 2011, so he states that after a thorough analysis of the European, British, American, Japanese, Chinese, and Indian schools of eco-criticism, directs the future of eco-criticism to the eco-critical scope in the third world countries. So it is the circumstance that Indian eco-criticism must study its movement and history. So the objectives of as hinted earlier, so are to critically study the present and past areas of environmental activities in Indian education in the reference of the large body of eco-critical scholarship in the West and to express the concerns. Next is man versus nature. So, anthropocentrism says that man is the center of everything. So, in the context of eco-criticism, anthropocentrism asserts that humans are the central focus because it emphasizes the significance of human perspectives, experiences, and values in the interpretation of literature and culture related to the environment. So, of this approach prioritizes human concerns over the intrinsic value of non-human entities, ecosystems, and the broader environment. So, eco-criticism often critiques anthropocentrism for its narrow focus on human interests and advocates for a more ecologically inclusive perspective that considers the interconnectedness of all living beings and ecosystems. Next is Bible says that the man is created from the image of God. So, sa eco-criticism po, the biblical concept that man is created in the image of God has been critiqued for contributing to anthropocentrism and the exploitation of the environment. So the interpretation of humans are bearers of God's image, has at times been used to justify human dominance over nature. So as it implies a special and privileged status for humanity. Eco-criticism challenges this anthropocentric interpretation by advocating for a more ecologically sensitive understanding of human existence that acknowledges the intrinsic value of the entire natural world. So critics argue that a more inclusive interpretation of biblical teachings should promote environmental stewardship and a recognition of the interconnectedness of all living beings. But, however, eco-criticism said that we are all equal and we are all part of the nature. So, man versus nature. So, next is Nature is the center. So in eco-criticism, nature is the center, not the man. So nature is the center. So in eco-criticism, the perspective that nature is the center, not man, arises from a shift in focus towards understanding and valuing the environment as having intrinsic worth independent of human interest. So, eco criticism challenges anthropocentric views by emphasizing the interconnectedness of all living beings and ecosystems. So, the argument is that nature deserves attention and consideration for its own sake rather than solely in relation to human needs or desires. So, this shift encourages a more ecologically inclusive approach, recognizing the significance of non human entities and ecosystems and promoting a balanced and sustainable relationship between humanity and the natural world. So, here's the question. So, what does eco criticism focus on its terms of literature to nature relationship? So, it's in my own point of view. So it's really wide open. So as long as you can find a text that has some bearing on nature, you can practice eco-criticism and you can ask very fundamental questions about how does this text approach to nature? How does it view it? So what can we learn from it? However, even though eco-criticism focuses on nature, it often also moves into other fields such as society and human behavior. So I think that's it for my report. And in continuation, Miss Willen Christelle P. Gaida will be the next to discuss. So that's it, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Willen Crystal Gaida, and now let's talk about the examples of eco-criticisms. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth, a lyric poem and one of the most popular works of him. The poem is inspired by an event on April 15, 1802, in which William and his sister Dorothy came across a longboat of daffodils while wandering in the forest. Shirley. Shirley translate Tigris is a 2021 Indian Hindi film directed by Amit V. Masorkar and produced by Teasers and Abondantia Entertainment. The film deals with the subject like human-wildlife conflict and wildlife conservation. The title of the film is a bit of misnomer, as in Hindi Sherni properly refers to a lioness, while the formal word for a tigress is a bagkin. Though the word Sherni is also frequently used to refer to tigresses. Journey received positive reviews from the film critics for raising awareness about the importance of wildlife conservation and balanced performance. Some books that are important in founding and developing eco-criticism. Liam Marx, The Machine in the Garden, 1964. The Machine in the Garden, Technology and a Pastoral Idea in America is a 1964 work of literary criticism written by Leo Marx and published by Oxford University Press. The title of the book refers to a trope in American literature representing the interruption of pastoral scenery by technology due to the industrialization of America during the 19th and 20th century. For example, the troop notably appears in Henry David Thoreau's Walden, 1854, when the western sound of a steam locomotive disrupts the natural landscape of Walden Pond. Marx uses this literary metaphor to illustrate the relationship between culture and technology in the United States as depicted in the work of American authors such as Herman Melville, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry David Thoreau, Mark Twain, Frank Norris, Henry Adams, Henry James, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. Wilderness and the American Mind by Frederick Fraser Nash, 1967. Outside Magazine has included this in a survey of books that change our world, and it has been called the Book of Genesis for environmentalists. Nash explored the future of wilderness and relief on its ethical and biocentric relevance. Roderick Nash's classic study of changing attitudes toward wilderness during American history, as well as the origins of the environmental conservation movements, has received wide acclaim since its initial publication in 1967. The Los Angeles Times listed it among the 100 most influential books published in the last quarter century. Nature's Economy: A History of Ecological Ideas, 1977, by Donald Worster. Nature's Economy is a wide-ranging investigation of ecology's past. It traces the origins of the concept, discusses thinkers who have shaped it, and shows how it in turn has shaped the modern perception of our place in nature. The book includes portraits in Linnaeus, Gilbert White, Darwin, Thoreau, and such key 20th century ecologists as Rachel Carson, Frederick Clements, Aldo Leopold, James Lovelock, and Eugene Odom. It concludes with a new part which looks at the directions ecology has taken most recently. Imagining the Earth: Poetry and Vision of the Nature, by John Elder, 1985. These landmark works explore how our attitudes toward nature and are mirrored and influenced by poetry, showing us a resurgent vision of harmony between nature and humanity in the work of some of our most widely read poets. Imagining the Earth reveals the power of poetry to identify, interpret, and celebrate a wide range of issues related to nature and our place in it. The Shadow of Civilization, by Robert Paggy Harrison, 1992. Robert Paggy Harrison enriches our understanding not only of the forest place in the cultural imagination of the West, but also of the ecological dilemmas that now confront us so urgently. And the last one, Nature of Writing and the Formation of American Culture, by Lawrence Bill, inspired by Thoreau. The most ambitious study to date of how literature represents the natural environment, with Thoreau's Walden as a touchstone, will give us a far-reaching account of environmental perception, the place of nature in the history of Western thought, and the consequences for literary scholarship of an attempting to imagine a more ecocentric way of being. In doing so, he provides a major new understanding of Thoreau's achievement and at the same time a profound rethinking of our literary and cultural reflections in nature. All in all, eco-critics encourage others to think seriously about the relationship of humans to nature, about the ethical and aesthetic dilemmas posed by the environmental crisis, and about how language and literature transmit values with profound ecological implications. That's all, and thank you. Do you have any questions?